Of putting someone on the same level is the question of showing a young...
I don't believe what I'm hearing.
Impressionable child.
Impressionable, my foot.
You don't think a child is impressionable?
I don't think that a child is...
And a child who's
I don't think that a child...
And a child who is...
I don't think a child is...
only exposed to Eurocentric...
Let me respond to you. I don't think a child is thinking in geopolitical terms.
You don't think what a child sees and hears and learns does not affect
I don't think he's thinking in geopolitical... I don't believe he's thinking in geopolitical terms.
Let me give you another analogy. A child watching television, if the only individuals that he sees on the screen do not look like him, how do you think that affects him?
We're not talking about banal television. We're talking about the curriculum in school.
Right. We're talking about history books with
We're
pictures.
Talking about reading the written word.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right. And
we're not talking about seeing a stupid TV program.
But, Mr. Grant, all the history
Hey,
books...
look, you know one of my favorite programs happens to be, and I don't mind admitting it, happens to be Homicide. It's on NBC Friday at 10 p.m.
Right.
The chief of the head of the precinct of the Baltimore Police is Yaphet Kotto.
Right.
Some of the lead detectives are black actors.
Right.
So I enjoy the program.
Right.
It's well written, well acted.
And it reflects...
What am I supposed to be?
And it reflects...
What am I supposed to sit there and think, oh, gee, I'm watching a black guy. I can't do that. I can't take this kind of conversation. I cannot take this kind of conversation. I really shouldn't be doing this kind of work anymore.
Do you understand the message?
Because I cannot believe a person who sounds as intelligent as you do by your pronunciation.
But that's because you're
and
looking
yet
at the
you
world
are
from your perspective.
No, and it's not the case.
A young child looking at that show that you like...
Are you a teacher?
No, let me just explain.
You
a young
bet your
child
sweet
watching
life you're not a
Homicide,
teacher.
if a young black child watches Homicide
are
and
you
sees
black?
a black
Wait a minute. Hold it. Maybe I'm being unfair. Are you black?
Yes.
Well, why didn't you say so? Why didn't you say, as a black person, this is the way I feel?
Because I'm speaking as an individual also.
Ah, very good. You made my point. Thank you. Straight ahead. Sergeant has just come into the barracks. Thank you very much, Don. Phew. I don't understand these guys. What am I doing here? Al, from Rutherford. Yes, Al, what on?
Hello, Bob. First, I want to say something very important. Happy birthday to you on this Saturday, and lots of good health.
You remembered it's March 14th, eh?
Absolutely. You share a birthday with Albert Einstein.
Right.
And also you share being a Piscean like I am. I had a birthday 13 days ago.
Oh, you're a Piscean.
Yes, I know exactly.
Can't stand the pompous arrogance of Ted Koppel.
Well, I just would like to tell you.
This is Ted Koppel. Anyway, what did I miss?
Okay, I just would like to tell you Howard Kurtz, who did that book, Spin Cycle. They were interviewing him, and actually it was a very good program because I think they were fair. What they were showing was how they had one woman from ABC.
I saw Howard Kurtz this morning.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't tell me the whole doggone program.
No. I just wanted to tell you
and
one thing.
I don't care who else was on it, okay?
I just wanted to tell you what the point I was making. Stop, Bob, stop. Calm down. You're getting all upset again.
Well, then why don't you hang up then and I won't holler at you?
Well, you want people not to call you?
No, I don't want you to go into a lengthy... a description of who was on. I don't care who was on.
Well, I was just making a point. I was just trying to tell you. They were showing how bad what the administration was doing, that they were actually keeping people from being put on the shows, and they really are just like Russia. I couldn't believe what they were saying, that they actually contact reporters, they contact the big shots in all the in the stations, and they won't let people on. Remember that our friend who wrote the book Unlimited Access?
You're talking about Aldrich.
Aldrich.
Yes.
Remember that time? They contacted them. They told them they didn't want him on. They wouldn't put him on because they didn't want him to come out with all that stuff about...
Well, hey, look, I understand what you're saying, Jane.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. And unfortunately, it's all too true. But Larry King was one of the people who was going to have Mr. Aldrich on, and he didn't have him on. But why? I mean, what would anybody be afraid of? What is this? What is Clinton going to do? Is he going to come in the studio and shoot somebody because they had a guest on that Clinton didn't want? Is that the idea?
Well, he does. Apparently what they say is they tell them they won't get access to the White House, to any of the interviews. That's what they're afraid of. So it's like a blackmail situation. If you want access to us, don't put these people on.
Yeah, but wouldn't people like that be doing a greater service if they would say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm having a guest on this program, and as a result of having Mr. Aldrich on this program, as a result of having him on this program, we will not have access to anybody at the White House because they don't want us to interview this man. If they would go public and expose the White House for what it truly is and has been all along, they would have done a great service, don't you think?
Well, of course, but Bob, everybody is not Bob Grant. And you see, it takes guts,
I just like, I'd like to thank my stars for the guy with the little red hat. Curtis Lever rules.
Let's say hello to Barbara checking in. Full moon and empty heads. La-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yes, go ahead, Barbara.
Hi, I hope I can stay composed. When you deal with Clinton, you really lose it. I saw Senator Ashcroft this morning revealing some wonderful information about our national security.
This isn't going to take place anyway. I mean, we might as well be arguing about where do we hide when the meteorite hits. We might as well be arguing about that, for heaven's sake.
I hope you're right. Right.
Please, Anthony, grow up, will you? Thank you. I tell you, we go through this all the time. For years, I've been interviewing people, not every week, obviously, or not even every month, but every now and then, when they come forth with a plan to get rid of the current income tax. And we always have the Anthonys, we always have people like that come out and say, yeah, but you know what? What about me? What about me? And you can't even reason with them. All right, Harvey, what's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Bob. I have a question. The basic philosophy behind this sales tax, if the government needs a certain amount of money with which to operate, they get it from income tax, or let's assume the bulk of it comes from income tax. Now, if you do away with the income tax, the government still needs the same amount of money, does it not? And is it not a question of, instead of getting it from an income tax, or you're getting it from a sales tax? But the fact is, the population, now, how it would be redistributed in terms of who would pay the tax, who would pay more tax or less tax or whatever, the fact would remain, as I see it, unless there's an explanation, that you'd still be paying the same amount of tax. The government's got to get it from either the sales tax or from the income tax.
Well,
where is the savings?
First of all, the government wouldn't need as much because, whether you know it or not, and you obviously don't, having an income tax the way we have in the year 2948. How's that? That's that has more chance of happening than any change. No, but don't worry, folks. It's not going to change. You're going to keep the big fat income tax. You're going to keep the big FICA tax. You're going to keep all these deductions. You people are so stupid. You don't realize you don't have the money that you would have if we got rid of that. You don't have. I mean, let's say you make $100,000 a year. Are you bringing $100,000 home? No, absolutely not. Do you have the discretion as to how to spend that $100,000? No, absolutely not. But you people don't care. That's why we're in this fix we're in.
All I'm asking is, where is the savings? Are you saying the savings are not?
Hey, look, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring Mr. Norquist, I'm going to bring Mr. Motomarco into the studio, and you can ask them the questions.
All right. You seem to
if you're going to have an open mind, at least, then it will be worth having them to come in. But if you're going to shut the door before you even hear everything...
No, who's shutting the door? I'm just asking a question. That's all I'm doing.
Well, you're asking a question prematurely, because we have to start crawling before you try to get us to walk and run. We have to crawl a little bit here first.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, I thank you.
I thank you. Speaking of crawling, who's that crawling in the studio right here? You know a lot of me, and a lot of things annoy me. You didn't know that? There's a brand new commercial for Blockbuster Video, and it has an infant in diapers doing dancing. I'm looking at two people who live in another world. They haven't seen it. I tell you something. You know what a real test for me is? To be confronted by two gentlemen. They're fine guys. Nothing wrong with them. If they had a dog like Buddy, they'd probably be very good to Buddy. But, no, there's nothing wrong with them. But whenever I bring something up, they look at me with that blank stare. Now, there's a real challenge, folks, to talk about something and get a blank stare. Better than a blank check, I guess.
The Bob Grant Show on WOR.
And they're making money. That kind of makes you think, don't it? Anyway, what I wanted to ask you, Bob, that other station, since you left, they had to resort to two hosts, the Heckle and Jekyll kind of act, to carry the ball that you carried by yourself.
Well, I appreciate your call, your support, and your recognition that Taco Bell is doing the right thing by not folding like a cheap camera. Keep listening to this radio station, Frank, and tell all your friends about it. It's the only radio station worth listening to. How does that grab you?
I've been listening for the last week and a half. I want to
answer. Well, you asked me who it was. How in heaven's name should I know?
No, maybe it had some weight to it and it was, just joking around. I just want to know if it was
it's obviously some guy is running for office.
All right.
And this poor, pathetic jerk doesn't have the sense to realize he's not doing his man any favor by... blabbing his name.
Right.
And if they want to buy political advertising, they should contact the sales department.
Okay. Yeah. I have another question for you.
Yes.
You remember Long John Nebel and Candy Jones, right?
Of course.
All right. He passed away?
In 1978.
1978 he passed away, right?
Yes.
See, you're dead, but you're too stupid to lay down. Get off.
I don't know what this guy said, but... I don't get it. Anyway, let's say hello to John from Staten Island, checking in on the Bob Grant Show on WOR. Yes, John.
Hey, what a Lulu. Hey, Bob, is David Hazarai still riding around that 1947 Studebaker, pea green, and looking very high in the seat because he's sitting on his money?
Yes, license plate SOB 696969. John, I want to tell you something. I happened to come across... a tape recording today. I put it in the car tape deck player. And there was some caller calling a gentleman on a broadcast on May 8th, 1994.
Uh-huh.
And this gentleman was complaining to the then program director who was doing the program for the regular host, who was on from, I believe, 11 o'clock until 12 o'clock, complaining because he allowed you to be heard too much.
Yeah, well...
And now the guy that he was complaining about allowing you to be heard too much is a fellow that I think you have had a big falling out with.
That's Bob. He's probably of the liberal bent, and you know the story. One voice of dissent is one too many for them.
That's right. That's it. They can't
there's a lot of people complaining about us lately, Bob. If you know what I mean.
Yes.
On the web and everything. But we won't go into that. But we're fighting back. But Bob, I wanted to bring up two things today. The assault on this country and our institutions and our heritage continues internally as well as externally. We had those America-hating Mexican racists who tried to drown out our national anthem at a sporting event between the United States and Mexico recently. And then the fans of the Mexican team threw bottles and other debris at the American team because they beat them. Bob, it's time that this country stop looking upon Mexico as, quote, our friendly neighbor to the south, unquote. They are not. Mexico is a deadly enemy who permits every kind of illegal activity there is on this planet to slip across their border with us. And they've joined forces with every left-wing group in our country to subvert and weaken this country, with plans, of course, to take back much of the Southwest and eventually make this a third-world country and smother our white European foundations and heritage. And I'll never forget the former president of Mexico, Lopez, I think his name was, about 12 or 13 years ago, who said if the United States invaded Cuba, he would side with the communist Fidel Castro. And this anti-American attitude is still widespread today in Mexico. It's in the people, too. We consider or they consider themselves rather to be co-citizens of the United States and Mexico, to claim a right for leeching off the United States taxpayers out west and elsewhere. And it's time to change our laws and throw all the illegals out and lay down the law to Mexico and treat them like the enemy of America that they are. And then we had those domestic enemies on the San Francisco School Board who are demanding that 70% of the books for their district be authored by non-whites. Now, this was racial, Bob, because you didn't hear the statement very much that one of the co-authors of this plan spouted. He said, quote, I'm paraphrasing right because I don't have the exact quote. He said, we're tired of the white European environment that they have to put up with. And this is nothing more than an attempt by a gang of white and America-hating revolutionaries to set up a forum to brainwash their future revolutionaries. And it's a further attack on our white European Judeo-Christian foundations, and to even speak to these haters about it legitimizes it, and they should be ignored. I don't know why we pay so much attention to them.
Well, yeah, that's we pay attention to them for the same reason we pay so much attention to the Klan. I mean, anybody that makes obnoxious, idiotic, stupid statements the media loves. But there's something else, though. And that is that as cockamamie as this idea is, as ill-founded, as unfair, as self-destructive as it is to everybody, including this same guy, whether it's Keith Jackson or Steve Phillips, the two guys that you're talking about, after a period of time, they seem to get what they want, don't they?
Yeah, they never give up, do they? They just keep pushing, and eventually they wear the opposition down, and we back off.
Yeah, and it's because the opposition gives up.
Right.
Yep.
You know, Bob, just to very quickly, if I can, if you have the time, to address the hypocrisy and the double standard that goes on in this country. You know, I'm banned from a few shows around the dial from calling because of a remark I supposedly made. Yet the same host who has banned me had on his show the other day Leonard Jeffries, whose remarks about animals, certain animals, comparing them to white Europeans is well known by now. He had the same person on. They can have a racist as long as he's a left-wing bigot. See, that's all right. You had to be let go from that other station because you were too radical for the new owners coming in. But they can hire a wacko like Ron Kuby. See, if you're on the left and you're a vile, police-hating, America-hating, white-hating, self-hating Jew, that's all right. But a person who's very conservative on the right, they've got to be dumped.
Mm-hmm.
That's the twisted brain of liberals, Bob.
Indeed, indeed. John, thank you for the call, sir. Thank you. And we're going to take a brief time out here on WOR, 710 on your radio dial, 1-800-321-8828, our telephone number. But right now, find here on WOR.
Yes, Mr. Grant. The richest country in the world does not have 100% of its citizens under any medical insurance, but yet Fidel Castro does. Why is that, Pop?
Because Fidel Castro is a great believer in freedom, and therefore, I think since you admire Fidel Castro, you ought to go there. You ought to, as a matter of fact, why don't you become Joanne Chesimard's houseboy or something like that?
Hands off Joanne Chesimard.
I mean, you know, you just make me say, get off my phone. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. You know, to have a discussion, to have an argument even, is one thing, but this guy's totally off the wall. Preposterous. Here's my point with this guy. Over the course of time, it's obvious that he's trying to think of what is the most outrageous, one of the most asinine, one of the most illogical statements to make. Then he makes it, knowing full well the reaction he's going to get. If he really believed, if this fellow, Lord knows what his real name is, one time he's Shem, another time he's Hakeem, then he's who knows. If he really and truly believed what he says he does, and if he were really the straightforward individual he tries to pretend he is, he would go to JFK, get a plane to Ottawa or Toronto or Montreal, and from there he would fly to Cuba. You can't fly directly to Havana from here. That's why I gave that circuitous route. He would go there, or he would go to any other country that had a communist regime and that hated America. But here's a guy who's been ripping off for a long time, living high on the hog, who hates America, or at least he pretends he does. I really don't see any point even taking his call anymore.
But thank God, but here's I had insulation from George the Atheist with the news. But Wednesday night, I wanted to call you. I couldn't make it to say that there was a news story on NBC Channel 4 of the outrage that Christy Whitman was expressing over the taped interview with Joanne Chesimard. I don't know if anybody ever called you about that.
Well, nobody called. I read about it, and I didn't have an opportunity to speak out about it, but this is an outrage. And if anybody should be brought back and put in chains, actually strapped in the electric chair, or now I think they use the lethal injection. If anybody should be given the death penalty, it's Joanne Chesimard.
Yeah, and I had some little ambivalence over it because I feel the same thing on her. And however, it made me think of the possibility that there could be some charge of racism against Christy Whitman for wanting that action to take place. And she even made a mention, I believe, because Ralph Penza, I think, gave the interview, and I think she made a message that this was not a racist.
Yeah, well, no, opinion. She doesn't have to be worried about anybody calling her a racist because she cut ties with me. So
I know
she's in the clear.
What I'm saying
she's okay. She's in the clear. I certify that she's in the clear.
Wouldn't it be ironic, however, if those famous group of ministers showed up on the Capitol steps to protest?
Well, no more ironic than it is that this fellow Phil Nobile, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has been a nemesis of mine for many years. He was in the audience at the taping of the Rolanda Watt program, and although we weren't talking about race or anything like that, when he raised his hand to speak, he stood up and immediately started attacking me as a racist, and he's done that all his life. But lo and behold, he has run into a buzzsaw as a result of his testimony in the Stephen Pagonis against Al Sharpton, et al. Trial up there in Poughkeepsie. And I don't know if you read his piece in yesterday's New York Post, but I couldn't help but think that there is some poetic justice in this world after all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that Governor Whitman is relying now on Janet Reno to do...
Well, she has to, because this would be a federal matter. A state agency cannot go having trouble falling asleep if you're bedraggled with concerns, worries, instabilities. Just say to yourself, I'm really Kiren McCue. I am really Kiren McCue. I am really Kiren McCue. Hey, what's on your mind, pal, huh? Hey, we put him to sleep. Wake up, Bob. You're on the road right now. You're heading to the outbound Lincoln Tunnel. You got a 45-minute wait. I guess you could take a nap. Holland Tunnel, 20 minutes. Take it down there if you can. Outbound George, westbound Cross Bronx Expressway, you are heavy from...
That ingratiate themselves, that subvert and get into a public institution and pervert the language and replace history with nothing more than left-wing propaganda. Of course, I am speaking to you, Bob, about this outrage, this travesty, this atrocity of calling the Japanese internment camps concentration camps, of defiling the holy soil of Ellis Island where our beloved immigrant forefathers first set foot upon this great land, by having an exhibition about how the Japanese Americans, the Nisei, were put into concentration camps during World War II, Bob, this is the same political vermin of the left that during the Enola Gay exhibit in 1995 claimed that the Japanese were fighting a, quote, war against Western imperialism and to preserve their unique culture, and America's war was, quote, racist. Well, I traced the genesis of that quote, and it turns out that that is exactly what the Japanese ultra-leftists, ultra-nationalists, the crypto-Nazis in Japan use to legitimize their war of genocide in World War II. So you see, Bob, the left is such political whores, such is their hatred of this country, that they will even side with Japanese crypto-Nazis in denigrating the United States. How dare they call these internment camps concentration camps? Their people were not sent there to be worked to death as slave labor. They were not gassed. They were not beaten or starved to death or used for medical experiments. And you know, Bob, you see how the left, the rats and pigs, pervert the language. They soften language, Bob. They change it when it suits them. For example, they'll say that welfare recipients now become clients, that hoodlums and thugs become youths. They'll find any way they can to change language. Primitive nations are called underdeveloped. Yet when it comes to the truth that these were internment camps, then suddenly they use a vile term that smears this country and calls it concentration camps. And even further what whores they are. Why is it when it comes to Stalin's concentration camps that were set up in the former Soviet Union, they call them work camps? Those were death camps. Those were concentration camps where people were sent as slave labor in Siberia, the Kola Peninsula, to be worked and starved and beaten to death, where tens of millions perished. But they never called those camps concentration camps. Or what about what happened in Vietnam when the communists took over? Those concentration camps were called re-education camps. Why, people were just sent there to relearn the error of their ways and the wonders of Marxist-Leninism. Those were slave labor and death camps that they had. But because it serves the political form of the left, because it serves their purposes, they will never call those camps death camps. And you know, Bob, it also points out by calling those internment camps concentration camps, the depth of anti-Semitism that is in the left. You know, you spoke before about the Ku Klux Klan and the neo-Nazis in this country. Yeah, you get these nuts come around with their shaved head or their robes, and they'll spew anti-Semitism. But the left is very, very devious in how they do it. Had they ever condemned the Soviet Union for all the years of repression of Jews in that country? Have they ever condemned the fact that it was the Soviet Union and the communist world that since World War II has done more to support enemies of Israel and of the Jewish state, that trained terrorists in their soil, that it was the Soviet Union that funded these terrorist death squads that got Jews? No, they'll never talk about that. Such is their anti-Semitism that they use that term, concentration camp, in conjunction with the Japanese to cheapen and defile the memory of the blessed 6 million. And, Bob, it comes down to this. Why are they calling those internment camps concentration camps? Because they cannot defeat anyone in a debate or an argument as to the validity of their political belief. All they are reduced to now, Bob, is that pathetic equivalency argument. So what they will do is say, how can we condemn any system? After all, the United States was no better than Nazi Germany. Why, look at the concentration camps that they put the Japanese in. Bob, there should be protests by the thousands out there at Ellis Island that these whores of the left dare to defile the history of this great nation. Thank you.
Vintage Frank, ladies and gentlemen. Vintage Frank said a great deal there. A great deal. 1-800-321-8828 here on WOR. And I want to tell you, Mr. Mark LaPonte is absolutely riveted. He's got goosebumps. Absolutely impressed. He stood at attention during the entire conversation, the entire peroration of Vintage Frank from Queens. Vic checks in now from North Brunswick on WOR. Yes, Vic.
Good evening, Bob. That's a tough act to follow, I'll tell you. Gonna break out some of those gold foil wrapped tapes and put together a collection of the best of Frank.
Well, he likes to expose propaganda.
I know he does.
Let's say hello to Teddy out there in Rhode Island. You're on WOR, Teddy.
Hi, Mr. Grant. Welcome back. It's been, I've only tuned in periodically or sporadically this week. It's been busy for me. I kind of feel that whoever it was that gave you the guidance or the line to be a talk show radio host really had good insight, because you are it, Mr. Grant. And I will say, the time when you were away, you always seem to have good people that fill in for you. But I know, being a Bob Grant listener, I think I can speak for a lot of other people. We missed you, and in the 2 days when we were waiting for you to come back, that first day was kind of anticlimactic, and now you're back into the same old groove, and we do love you. I also wanted to wish you a good weekend and make the best of your birthday, even though it's going to be a bit rainy. There's lots of sunshine ahead for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Teddy. I appreciate everything you've said. And I appreciate all the cards that I've received from people who thought enough of me to extend birthday wishes. And that slams the lid on things for today and for this week. My thanks to the great Rob Barris, our gentleman who sings under the controls, the magnificent Mark LaPonte, our major domo, and until Monday, Bob Grant reminding you, your influence counts. Use it straight ahead.
Now, you can have limousine service in over 300 cities throughout the United States simply by dialing 1-800-USE-A-LIMO. It's easy, it's simple. 1-800-USE-A-LIMO, an Airbrook company.
Coming up after the news, the Joan Rivers Show on Radio 710 WOR, New York.
WOR News at 7 o'clock. Good evening. I'm Shellie Strickler. It's mostly cloudy. It's 34 degrees. We could see some snow tonight. The Paula Jones case revealed. But first, the military jury in Virginia not guilty on almost every count in the case of Sergeant Major Gene McKinney. He was convicted on an obstruction of justice charge only, but he was found not guilty on all of the sexual misconduct charges against him. McKinney, who was removed from his post as Sergeant Major of the Army last year, faces a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison and a dishonorable discharge. Had he been convicted on all 19 charges, he would have faced 55 and a half years in prison, loss of rank, and retirement benefits. But it looks like he's only been convicted of one charge. The Paula Jones case is now in full view. Her lawyers released the documents in a Little Rock courtroom to show why they believe the sexual harassment case against the president should go forward on May 27th. The papers claim President Clinton and his aides are suppressing evidence about a string of liaisons. Clinton's lawyer says the filing is like cotton candy. There's nothing to it. With more on some of the revelations in that filing, correspondent Bill Greenwood for WOR.
Former White House aide Kathleen Willey describes an incident next to the Oval Office in which she says President Clinton kissed her on the lips, fondled her, and put her hand on his private parts. In his sworn deposition, the president denies it all. But aide Linda Tripp tells of seeing Willey leave and says presidential troubleshooter Bruce Lindsay twice asked her not to tell. 4 Arkansas state troopers recount numerous alleged sexual improprieties, including meetings with Jennifer Flowers, who swore that she had a 12-year relationship with Mr. Clinton. Bill Greenwood, Washington.
Massachusetts Congressman Joseph Kennedy getting out of politics.
Well, then they took him to the infirmary when they realized that he was on his last legs.
That they must have, because they said they died here.
Yeah. Anyway, what is the point of the conversation? Where are we going with this?
Well, what I'm saying is this should be looked into.
All right, it should be looked into. Thank you very much, Gene. Opinion, and you're expressing it, so you're standing up, but don't expect a whole heck of a lot of support most people feel on an issue like this.
People just do not. They go on about their business, and it's the parade's going by, and it's going to hit them one day. They're going to have to say, hey, and now we have to go to the streets to get our rights back.
Listen, Jack, I got to move on. I really, I'm not being patronizing, but I really think you ought to take a deep breath, stand back, and ask yourself why you're putting so much emotion in this. Anyway, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to swing over to the WOR Traffic Control Center one more time. And I'm going to suffer withdrawal over the weekend because It won't be until Monday that I hear another traffic report from Kerin McCue.
I'll do my best to make this a good one, Bob. We got a lot to talk about because
Cuomo knows that he's not telling the truth. That is not true. There may be those rare exceptions, but they are very rare. Most individuals, even behind bars, would prefer to stay alive than to be executed. And another thing with the specious Mario Cuomo point of view, he says, well, they're kept in jail for the rest of their lives, so society is safe. No, they're not kept in jail. There is a huge percentage of people who've murdered once or even twice who are released only to kill again. Straight ahead.
This is the Bob Grant Show on WOR.
Let's play a few bars of the International. Here's Jimmy from Brooklyn.
Hello, Mr. Grant. About 10
How
years...
does the International go, Jimmy?
Oh, I don't remember, Mr. Grant. It upsets my stomach to hear it. And I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot, and so do many of my friends.
You know, I finally saw... people are going to think I'm really way behind the times. And in some respects, I guess I am. But I finally saw Dr. Zhivago a couple of weeks ago, the day they had all these ridiculous pre-Super Bowl shows. And on Channel 13, they played Zhivago without the interruptions for the commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know, I caught myself thinking of you at one point.
Uh-oh.
Did you see the motion picture?
No, I didn't.
Well, you should, because
I should, you're right.
It tells how a revolution which in some respects was well intended was taken over by the Bolsheviks.
Mm-hmm.
How the Bolsheviks subverted the revolution.
Yeah, well, the communists don't usually win by the strength of their numbers because they usually exploit other people. They win by the strength of their, not character, but their intellect.
That's it.
As devious and diabolical as it is, it's the way the Democrats work today. They have a plan, and the Republicans are running around not knowing what the heck's going on. Anyway, I heard the other day in the news, and I didn't get to track it down or read it anywhere yet, there was a U.S. government sting operation, and they captured Colombian drug barons working with former Soviets. They wanted to bring drugs into America with submarines. This is interesting, but about 10 years ago, Democrat Congressman Solars in Brooklyn, first he supported the Contras in Nicaragua, but then he was against them. So I went on a sort of an information rampage against Solars. Wherever he went to speak, I was there handing out papers exposing some of his, what I consider dangerous positions. Anyway, he ended up going down to Peru to check into the drug problem, and I have his newsletter in my hand. I'm just going to read you a sentence. This is from Congressman Solars about 10 years ago. Marxist terrorists brutally murdered several of the coca eradication workers. Another sentence further on says, the foreign leaders I met understand that the unholy alliance between the narco-traffickers and the communist guerrillas in their countries threatens the survivability of the democratic institutions. Now, this is about 10 years ago. And then this, 1994, I have here in March from the Wall Street Journal, talking about Soviet Georgia, where the CIA agent Woodruff went there to check on Soviet dictator Shevardnadze's involvement in drugs, and Woodruff was murdered. Apparently, Mr. Woodruff from the CIA had come to believe that the men Washington had sent him to cooperate with were, in fact, involved in the heroin shipments. That's in Soviet Georgia. From there, it goes throughout Western Europe and Eastern Europe, which is really discrediting capitalism and democracy by Soviets now having their own drug problem. But I want to tie this into Congressman Dornan. Congressman Dornan, while he was still congressman, had very recently met with U.S. experts on the KGB involvement and control of the drug attack waged against the free world. And I believe for that reason, the radical left gave an extra effort to get rid of Dornan because Dornan was not a wimp. He was the kind of guy that would speak up. And I was so happy that finally we have somebody in the U.S. government who's not a coward and who will speak up and be willing to call for open and thorough investigations, including bringing in General Sezhner, the highest-level Soviet defector ever, who's been trying since 1968 to warn us about the Soviet involvement. And he was supposed to speak before the Congress and Senate several times, but for various mysterious reasons, the meeting never came about where this general was able to speak in front of Congress. Because we have a lot of information, Mr. Grant, now showing the Soviet involvement. We believe that they actually started it. He was convicted. Everybody under him was convicted. They got like triple life sentence, double life sentence, but the leader only got 10 years. And these two buildings were supposed to be taken away under the RICO statutes. But I guess all of this communist Chinese money going to Clinton, they worked out some sort of arrangement where these buildings are going to stay in the Chinese communist hands. Now, the guy in charge of this drug operation was originally indicted on 82 counts, and somehow he only got 10 years. And his underlings, as I said, got triple life sentences. So the enemy has a lot of influence in this country, particularly when they have a guy like Clinton in the White House. So, as you know, Mr. Grant, I could go on for hours. I got so much on this drug thing. It's disgusting because you've got the radical left, the pro-Castro people in our Congress, like Maxine Waters, who are alleging the CIA involvement. But who knows? Being that the Soviets had penetrated the CIA and they were actually running CIA's counterintelligence, who knows? And the Contras, I supported the Contras. 9 of the 11 Contra leaders were former communist Sandinistas. Several of them kept contact with Castro even after they became Contra leaders. And the recent elections in Nicaragua, some of these so-called Contra leaders supported the communist Ortega. So perhaps the communists were able to discredit the Contras by infiltrating. They have a tactic called discredit from within. Anything's possible, Mr. Grant.
Jimmy, I appreciate the call. I thank you very much. The revolution has begun. The arthritis cure.
The stinking carrion of socialism has lied. They have perpetuated the myth of the 20th century, the hoax of the 20th century, and the lie of the 20th century. And that lie, that myth, that hoax was touched upon by you yesterday. And it really got to me. It really moved me to call because you were beginning to mention how during the Stalin-Hitler pact, the stinking carrion of communism in this country supported that pact. They were against American involvement in World War II. But they have perpetrated the lie of the 20th century that they were these heroic and noble people who were moved to oppose Nazism at risk of their own lives, when in fact the stinking carrion of socialism supported that pact. They supported Hitler, they supported Stalin, and they have continued this lie. One of the lies of the stinking carrion of socialism has been under socialism, no one starves. Yet a new book has come out that under Mao Zedong, 30 million Chinese starved to death during the Great Leap Forward from 1959 to 1962. We as civilized people cannot even begin to comprehend the mass of genocide on such a gigantic scale. And yet what has happened in this country? The so-called intellectuals sat around and told us about the wonders of Marxist-Leninist socialism in China and how Mao had transformed a new society. And when people spoke out up against communism, they were called fanatics, lunatics, right-wing extremist maniacs. And these stinking carrion of socialism have continued this smear campaign. And because the majority of American people are historical ignoramuses, because they get their history from what they see on TV or a movie screen, they don't understand the crime that was committed and how these toadies and lackeys of the left want to continue the crimes of socialism in this country. They always try to hide behind noble platitudes and noble slogans, like no one starves under socialism. The lie of the 20th century has been that the communists opposed the Nazis, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. Does anyone think that Adolf Hitler woke up one day and figured out his final solution to the Jewish problem in Europe? No, he didn't get it from that famous quote, that oft-used quote about the Armenians. You remember, who remembers the Armenians? No, he got it when Joseph Stalin, the god of the stinking carrion of socialism in this country, committed massive genocide in the Ukraine and murdered anywhere between 4 and 11 million Ukrainians, when he decimated and totally wiped out the Ukrainian Catholic Church, when he saw how the toadies, the propagandist lackeys, and ideological hyenas of the left, scum like Lillian Hellman, went to the Ukraine and saw that murder and came back and said nothing, and the world knew nothing, he modeled that Holocaust after what he saw Joseph Stalin get away with, just as Mao modeled his genocide after what he saw Hitler and Stalin get away with. And to say that the communists opposed the Nazis in the 1930s, it's an historical fact that the KGB, or which was then the NKVD, and the Gestapo exchanged information. So that when Poland was divided, anti-communist Poles were sent over from the Soviet sector to the German sector to be exterminated, and anti-communist Poles were sent from the German section to the Soviet section to be exterminated. Yet the myth of the 20th century, the hoax of the 20th century, the lie of the 20th century has been how they opposed each other. And in fact, when we hear about how communists opposed Hitler, there's a quote from Adolf Hitler in Robert Conquest's magnificent biography of Stalin, Stalin, Breaker of Nations, where he compares both. And in it, Hitler said, in our movement, the two extremes come together, the communists from the left and the officers and students from the right. These two have always been the most active elements, and it was the greatest crime that they used to oppose each other in street fights. The communists were the idealists of socialism. So don't let anyone fool us or try to fool us when they talk about communism being a humane system. And yes, there's some good in socialist programs. No, they are trying to graft a cancer on this country. And the more fanatical people are in opposing communism, the more I give them credit, because this was the crime of the 20th century. Thank you.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant and historically right on target, ladies and gentlemen, right on target. Frank picked up on something that I was trying to say yesterday, but we got cut off by the clock. And he reminded me in his brilliant dissertation just now, and talking about FDR. Prior to June 22nd, 1941, communists were parading up and down the White House, calling Roosevelt a warmonger because he was tilting, obviously, very noticeably toward England. He wanted to bail out England against the Nazis and wanted to get the United States involved in World War II. He was a warmonger. He was a warmonger. He was a warmonger. That's what they were saying. But then, June 22nd, 1941, when the 3 million man German army of the East was launched against the Soviet Union, suddenly the communists couldn't get us in the war fast enough. Here's Todd on his mobile phone calling from Route 280 on WOR. Yeah, Todd? Todd, are you there? Todd is not there. Okay, let's try Danny from Tamarack, Florida. Danny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Nice talking to you. We got 80-degree temperature here in Tamarack, Florida. Actually, I'm from New York.
Major in history, American history, and I want to say that your uncle and I were part of it in World War II. And I want to say, Mr. Bob Grant, that when you mentioned that the Nazis walked into Russia in 1940, you said June?
No, June 22nd, 1941. 41.
Mr. Bob Grant, I'm sorry. And also, France, we got there in 1944, June, but France, when did they fold up? In 40?
Yeah, France, if you remember, the Germans completely fooled them because they didn't try to go through the Maginot Line. Instead, they went through the Low Countries, Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg, completely outflanking the Maginot Line, and went through the province of Sedan, where we get the name Sedan. Went through Sedan and completely encircled the French, and they fell on the 10th of June, 1940.
And Mr. Bob Grant, D-Day was June 6, 1944, the invasion of Normandy, northern France, and September of 1944, they invaded the American southern France, the 82nd Airborne Division, the 45th Infantry Division, and also the 36th Infantry Division. And I met a lot of buddies over there. I was after the fact of both invasions. I was there, and I seen what was going on, and the Nazis were so treacherous, and what they did to people. It was and also Japan bombed Pearl Harbor 1941, December 7th, which means they worked in cahoots. The Nazis and the Japanese, they were all in it together.
Well, look, this is no startling news. You're not making a revelation. Didn't you ever hear of the Rome, Berlin, Tokyo Axis? The Axis? Huh?
Yes.
Okay. Our side was known as the Allies, and their side known as the Axis.
Yes. And we had England, Scotland, and we had...
Okay, listen, you're a great guy. I appreciate the call, and I thank you very much, George, a stand-up guy, a great patriot. Speaking of great guys, here's Russ Evans in the WOR Traffic Control Center. Russ. All right, thanks very much, Bob. Traveling 287 out in Jersey, still a bit...
I hadn't been tuned into your show for a while, and I don't know if anybody called to say this, but I will do it belatedly to one of the greatest presidents our country's had. I wish him a belated birthday blessings, and we sure could use Ronald Reagan. I got a question for you now that deals with you. When Ronald Reagan was president, were you as much of a pessimist as you are now?
No.
Good. That was one of the finest times in last, say, 20 years when he was president. And last time I called you, I wanted to start talking about the Republican Party and switch over to why the Democrats do so well, but you thought you knew what I wanted to say, and you kind of cut me off. I'll call a different time. Blessings to Ronald Reagan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir, and I join you in saluting Ronald Reagan on his...
Chris Ruddy there, and I want to thank you for having him on. You're one of the few people, the only person in New York that I can think of that has this courageous reporter on with anything like regularity. But I do tend to agree with Mr. Ruddy about the focus of Starr's investigation probably being misplaced. I think the action should be in Washington, not in Little Rock. Perhaps Starr is going after Clinton. You know, maybe the way Elliot Ness went after Al Capone, who, let's recall, was brought down not as a mobster, but because he was a tax evader. But that said, there are, Bob, other witnesses whose accounts would corroborate what Jim McDougal and David Hale say. You know, the Clinton perjured himself when he denied knowing about that illegal $300,000 loan that Susan McDougal got. One of those witnesses is Judge Bill Watt. Mr. Watt testified at McDougal's Whitewater trial last year. And in that testimony, he said that way back in 1986, David Hale came to him and told Watt about Clinton leaning on Hale for that money. Let's recall this is a contemporaneous recollection about an event that happened 10 years ago, long before anybody ever dreamt that Bill Clinton would be president, long before Whitewater was an issue at all, long before anybody had any reason to make this stuff up. The other witness is L.D. Brown. He was one of Clinton's premier bodyguards, one of the Arkansas State Troopers. Brown also says that Clinton, in fact, he says he witnessed Clinton discussing that loan with David Hale. L.D. Brown's sworn grand jury affidavit, as a matter of fact, can be found in the back of R. Emmett Terrell's book, Boy Clinton. Let me just quote a little bit directly from this sworn grand jury affidavit. This is L.D. Brown talking. During our conversation, Clinton saw David Hale in the area. He turned away from me to talk to Hale. The governor's back was to me as he spoke to Hale. I heard Governor Clinton say to David Hale words to the effect of, quote, "We need to raise some money. You're going to have to help us out," unquote. This was a conversation L.D. Brown witnessed that took place near the Capitol in Little Rock in 1986. I don't know why these two people, Brown and Judge Watt, don't seem to be turning up at any of the reports on this. But there's another little tidbit I wish somebody would dig out of the archives. It's a tape made by Sheffield Nelson, who James McDougal had gone to in 1992 when he was a little ticked off at the Clintons. Let's remember, McDougal has changed his story twice now. He started singing pretty loudly to Jeff Girth initially, and then he kind of backed off a lot of that stuff. But before he backed off, he told Sheffield Nelson, and Nelson has this on tape, he told Nelson, "I could sink there being the Clintons' story, quicker than they could lie about it
if I could get in a position where I wouldn't get my head beaten off. Yeah. Now, I don't know. With all this evidence, if it were you or me, I think we'd be indicted in a heartbeat. Without a doubt. One other thing, Bob. Susan McDougal and her denial of this alleged affair between herself and the president. Yes. This subject was broached on Primetime Live. According to Wall Street Journal last fall, there are outtakes which have since been subpoenaed by Ken Starr. He's got these outtakes in his possession. And in those outtakes, Diane Sawyer asked Susan about that alleged affair. Yes. And her response was, I don't want to comment on that. It would be hurtful. Ah. Not exactly a ringing denial.
No. Not exactly. Well, Carl, you are a valuable treasure, really, for what it's worth. I just wonder whether anything is going to come of all this. It's got to. As a matter of fact, in the New York Post today, they have an editorial in which they refer to it as, they refer to what you were talking about as Ken Starr's full plate.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Bob.
Right now, let's swing over to the WOR Traffic Control Center, and I trust that Mr. Clark Logan is with us today. Clark, good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Grant. Good to see you, too. Let's check out the
Jay Diamond. He has more talent in his little pinky than Joan Rivers ever had. What makes me sick is that you didn't say one word, not one word about what's going to happen to Jay.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen to Jay. He's been offered another deal here, and it's up to him. You know, I'm not his agent. I'm not his manager. Look, Robert, don't be snide. Don't be a sneak. You called claiming you wanted to talk about something else.
You know, he has many thousands of fans.
What do you want me to do? Hey, tell me,
not
Robert.
Not one word about Jay Diamond, Bob.
Robert,
you're a turncoat, and you're a hypocrite.
How does that
And I hope you get fired, and Jay Diamond takes your place. Good night.
Well, Robert, the fact of the matter is, Jay was only put on here as a fill-in. Nobody told him he had a permanent job. I lobbied for him. I lobbied for him very hard. But I don't run the station, you schmuck. I have to laugh at these guys. If the guy gets hired, I get credit. If the guy doesn't get hired, I get blamed. I'm not in management, folks. If I were, then I would gladly take the blame or take the credit. Now, listen, as long as that jerk brought that up, let me tell you, I wanted Jay very much to come in tonight, but he chose not to. And I hope he will accept the deal that the station has offered him, but Jay speaks for himself. Nobody speaks for Jay. I tell you, Jay is an incredibly talented person. You don't need me to tell you that. He really is. And I would love to have him be my sidekick right here. That'd be great. But having said that, I must tell you that he has a mind of his own. Damn it. Because he asked me my advice and he didn't take it. Adam from Garden City, what's on your mind?
Yeah, okay, Bob. This is on the same topic. I just wanted to basically say that Jay Diamond was absolutely terrific in stepping into Barry Gray's shoes. His commentary was concise. The conversation was very intelligent. And I just hope that he does take whatever good offer that WOR makes, because we really want him here. And 7 to 9 o'clock, or whatever time he does take, should be declared Jay Diamond territory unanimously.
Well, I'm disappointed, needless to say, but look, they don't call me in and say, hey, listen, what should we do?
Was he offered a later time, Bob, or?
I'm really not at liberty to say that, because I don't know the specifics, but I do know that he was offered something which I told him, take the long view and take it. It wasn't what he really had wanted. But I think his feelings were hurt, understandably, because he worked very hard in the weeks that he filled in the slot left by the unfortunate death of Barry. And
yes, sir. He was terrific.
What else can I tell you? I don't know why people do what that jerk did ahead of you. This
He was a schmuck.
He really was. I don't understand why they do that. What am I supposed to do? Single-handedly tell the management of the station, listen, you do what I want you to do. And they're going to do it? No, I'm an employee here.
No, I just think if they ever did take a listening poll of WOR listeners leading on from your show to the next 2 hours, I feel that he would win it by acclamation. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I feel about it.
Well, Adam, you're a gentleman. God bless you. You're a gentleman because you have a disagreement, and yet you were able to express it without becoming ridiculous. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, straight ahead.
Can you believe I enhanced my memory and mental clarity just by taking an herbal supplement? Hundreds of research studies on ginkgo have been conducted at medical universities around the world, and scientific agreement is unanimous. Ginkgo helps to improve memory and concentration by improving circulation to the brain. You too can do
this about the flag controversy, that if the only intelligent thing now for the state of Georgia, is it? That's a Georgia flag?
Yes, sir.
The only intelligent thing to do now would be just for the state of Georgia to develop a new flag that's acceptable by all parties, and the flag
Well, why
that
does it have to
doesn't conjure up scenes of people suffering.
But look.
Of the past. Because you got to look to the future.
But, Tom,
and
the
you
flag...
got industry, business, commerce.
What are you making a speech or are you talking?
It has to be with industry, business.
I'll forget the arts.
vacations.
I'll forget
the
architecture.
business has to go on. You know what I mean?
No kidding,
Tom. You can't wallow in the big.
Tom, this is what I call a non-call.
Like
Thank you, Tom. That was a non-call. There are calls and there are non-calls. That was a non-call. How stupid. They got to think about business. They got to think about industry. I think Tom takes a cork out of the... he wouldn't... he wouldn't get doers. He's more a ripple type. Takes the cork out of the ripple bottle and... breathes in a little bit, and then he decides to call every now and then. Sorry to have to say that about Tom up the Bronx. But, all this, you know what they should do? He said they should come up with a flag that's acceptable to all. Why does it have to be acceptable to those of us who live in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut or Pennsylvania or anywhere else? Maybe we ought to check out the state bird of Georgia. See if we approve of the state bird. I think it's the brown thrasher. But their state flower I find offensive. I am offended by the state flower of Georgia. And I think I'll run my political campaign based on eliminating Georgia's state flower. What is it? The Cherokee rose. I didn't give that flora, the title Cherokee rose, but that's what that particular type of rose is called, a Cherokee rose. Now just think of all the people of Native American heritage, whether they be Cherokees or Seminoles or Aztecs or what have you, they might be offended. By the way, one of the largest cities in Georgia, second only to Atlanta, Columbus, and Savannah, and Macon, is Albany, Georgia. Isn't that interesting? Now, we do have Kitty from the Bronx. Are you there, Kitty?
Yes, I am.
Trust that.
I know
Cut
that.
it out.
I know. That's true.
Cut it out.
But see, the thing is...
I mean, what are you going to do? You got to go around writing scripts for Jesse Jackson. Now, here's what you say. I mean, that's demeaning. I tell you... I find what you said maybe
sorry, Bob.
well-intentioned, but I think it's demeaning.
I
what you just
apologize,
said.
Bob.
All right, thank you. Apology accepted. They should tell them 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 and 4 is 8. Good heavens. Sometimes I do get irascible, but if you notice, usually it's for good reason. I think, anyway. I justify every action I take. I sanction every... You get punchy. Ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you, Some people say, oh, you know, you have such a good sense of humor. No, it isn't a good sense of humor. It's just that I get punchy after a while. I do not believe that a human being was intended to sit behind a microphone for 4 hours and talk to anybody and everybody nonstop over controversial issues. I do not believe that. It's like being shot out of a cannon, and maybe you hit the net and maybe you don't. Whatever that means. Okay. Here's a guy I'm supposed to have lunch with very soon. He thinks I'm fluffing him off. I'm not. As a matter of fact, I might get in Cindy Adams' column if I'm seen going into a posh restaurant with the likes of Clark Logan in the WOR.
To go on WLIB and make the statement that Yankel Rosenbaum got out of his car and started taunting the crowd of blacks.
Ah.
And the feckless talk show host on that station, not once did they think to say, Sonny, do you have any proof of this? You know, that's a very serious charge.
It certainly is. But, you know, you're talking about places and radio stations where the truth isn't even questioned. I mean, you can create any lie, make up out of whole cloth any story, and it will be accepted if it suits the propaganda needs of not only the person telling the story, but the person listening. They want to believe this stuff. Don't you agree with that?
Oh, sure. Exactly that they want to believe it. Because if they didn't want to believe it, if they had just a mere taste of objectivity, you know, then they would have the courage to stand up and number one, you know, tell the guy he's crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and number two, ask him for proof.
Well, the last thing in the world, these people that you're talking about, and I think most of us know who you mean, the last thing in the world they want to be accused of is having an open mind.
Oh, absolutely. because if they have an open mind, you know, then they would have to get rid of their demagoguery. Confederate flag issue.
Indicating we've got the sleaziest administration we've had in a long, long time, maybe the sleaziest yet. 4 Democrat fundraising figures have just announced they will not cooperate in the House probe. They refuse to testify. What have they got to hide? And why do they want to protect Slick Willie? Are they afraid that they might be walking along a railroad track some evening and somehow or other the train will jump the track and run over them? John in Pennsylvania, this is Bob Grant. What's on your mind, John?
Bob, this is John from Southampton. Nice speaking to you. You had a caller on a while back who mentioned something about Jackie Robinson getting a dishonorable discharge.
We devoting so much time to the state of a person's discharge, whether it was less than honorable, whether it was a dishonorable. Why all this preoccupation?
Well, the fact that you mentioned about, somebody mentioned about Jackie Robinson having such a fine record, and then being this fellow.
All I said was my brief contact with the man, I thought he was a fine man. That's all I said.
You did. I'm not talking about you, but the fellow that called you said that he had been...
you know, do we have to keep going on and on about this? I mean,
no, I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry, but what the hell is it? I'd like to get inside your heads, all of you guys out there. Why is this of such import? Are you hoping to somehow or other besmirch the reputation of this man?
Who?
Is that what it is?
No, I'm saying that he was not dishonorably discharged. I'm not besmirching him. I'm trying to help him. Help his good name.
The only reason I'm saying this to you is not that you're guilty, but I'm talking to you about those other guys.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm not accusing you, John. You're fine. You're fine. And if anybody saw Paul Newman and somebody up there likes me, they know clock each day. You know, I come in here and I count down. Like right now, I'm saying, 2 hours and 21 minutes to go. It's a countdown. My life is a countdown.
I listen to you on WFTL, and down here in South Florida, sunny South Florida, of which most of the people, I should say, are from New York.
Yet you call African Americans, you call blacks African Americans. Why is that?
Because this is, in general, what is in use right now. Why
are you following those guidelines when they're not from Africa? They're born here in America.
Yeah, that's true. They are. There are a lot of people who were born here in America who are referred to as Polish Americans. I mean, what do you want from me?
Why don't you just call them blacks or just Americans?
Hey, that's a great idea. Terrific, Wayne. I never heard of that before.
Jackson's the guy who got African Americans going.
That's right.
And I don't know why you want to follow in his footsteps.
Well,
God forbid.
Hey, maybe I should still be saying Negro or colored.
No, just black is good enough. I call myself a white guy.
Yeah.
Just some food for thought, Bob. Enjoy your show.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Great guy. What appears to be your annoyance. Is it you? Are you annoyed when you see the stars and bars?
Well, I didn't used to, but I'm starting to wonder why it is seen in the places where I see it.
Are you going to designate areas that are it's allowed to show the stars and bars, and other areas where it's incongruous?
No,
why are you paying so much attention to something I think so insignificant?
Oh, well, I thought it was significant because it was brought up on your show. That's why.
Well, okay. You know why it was brought up on the show? It was brought up on the show because they took down the Georgia state flag in Albany yesterday. That's why it was brought up.
Well, I don't know if that's a good idea. But
What do you know? Do you stop blacks that might be in an automobile next to you and say, "Hey, do you see that stars and bars? Does it irritate you? Does it bother you?"
No.
I mean, how paternalistic do you want to get?
No, I haven't conducted any survey like that. In fact, I would be somewhat timid about asking a black person about that.
Well, I think maybe you have the wrong idea about blacks.
Post article that slavery had nothing to do with racism. It had to do with the availability of people. If they weren't found in Africa, they would have been found somewhere else, even if they were white. What I resent are people walking around this country with X caps and T-shirts honoring Malcolm X, a man who hated my country and a majority of its people. And the left-wing skunks who are complaining about this flag, like David Patterson, they didn't mind. They didn't say a doggone thing about the left wing in this country carrying the enemy's flag during the Vietnam War, the battle flag of the North Vietnamese. So they're hypocrites. That's one topic. Secondly, Bob, Hakeem, who called yesterday, referred to Jesse Jackson as the Honorable Jesse Jackson. Well, what is Jesse Jackson, a judge now? There's nothing honorable about a man who hates white people, hates Jews, hates America, and travels to outlaw enemy nations to hug his fellow America haters. He's no different than the leader of the cult of Islam, Louis Farrakhan. And I always hear sycophant cowards and black racists excuse Jesse Jackson's Hymietown remark by saying, the man apologized. What do you want from the man? But when David Duke apologized for many things he said in the past, there was no olive branch like that extended to him. He'll be condemned forever because he's white. And, Bob, a couple of years ago, I called you and I said, do you ever notice that when it can't be denied that a black person has committed a heinous crime, those who are always stirring up racial trouble suddenly call for the healing process to start? Well, ex-con Herbert Daughtry is now calling for the healing process in Crown Heights, now that it's obvious Limerick Nelson is a racist murderer, and they can't get out of it. Now, this will last long enough until enough time has elapsed and it's forgotten, and then something else happens where they can blame white people and use it for political purposes again. And then you have one more final thing. David Dinkins had the nerve to say on the Gabe Pressman show, on the Sunday News show, all my life I've worked for the children of New York. Bob, this is the same David Dinkins who, according to a New York Post article of May 19th, they exposed the fact that he transferred $11 million from youth services groups to front groups in order to help re-elect David Dinkins. This is the same David Dinkins who then was shown patting children on the head in his re-election campaign commercials. This is not a nice man. He never has been. He gets very annoyed and nasty and vicious whenever you disagree with him, and you can see it wherever he appears. So those who think that this man is a nice man, like Ed Koch, the political hack, just isn't. They're not facing reality. And sorry for the other thing, Bob.
All right. Thank you, John. Let's see, where do we go from here? How about John from Carroll Gardens? Yes, John from Carroll Gardens.
Hi, Bob.
Yes.
One more thing about that flag. No, I'm only kidding. It's amazing what we talk about for 2 days with this flag.
You got a good sense of humor.
You know, I called about the butcher of Brentwood. I hate even talking about this case. But, you know, like everybody else, I was curious to see the reaction of the jurors, what they discussed and how they felt. And one after the other. When O.J. took the stand, he lost all his credibility, the pictures of the shoes. And then they went to the one black, the alternate juror, and she says that she found him very credible. And the pictures really didn't prove anything. They didn't.
Around your head. What a great guy. Now, he thinks I'm being snide, but I mean, I don't know. The music was not equivalent to the words, if you know it.
Piece of wax melted